everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Catheta webinar. We're coming to you live on August 20th. For any NLC webinar first-timers here today who don't know, our Catheta webinars get their name from the Creek word for learning. And today you're going to learn some time management secrets of high achievers from Russ Siegel. He's the executive director of the Sequoia Fund. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the training and development specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could join us for today's webinar. If you could follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law pictured here. So just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Before we get started, I want to familiarize you with some of the features available to interact with today's webinar. If you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of a hand with a plus sign. By clicking that icon, you could either raise your hand, agree, disagree, show applause, show laughter, or even signal requests like asking the instructor to speak louder or to slow down, please. Now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you'll see a pod that says Files. Here you'll find a copy of today's slides, as well as a participant handout meant for today's webinar. If you want to download those items, just hover over the item with your mouse and then click on that down arrow to download it onto your device. It should save in your device's download section. Next pod over, we have the web links pod. Here you can find a link to today's webinar feedback survey. You could join our weekly newsletter. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and all the way down at the bottom is a link to download the Adobe Connect app. Finally, all the way to the right, we have the chat pod available. This is how you can communicate with both the instructor and the NLC staff. Whatever you want to type, just click in that box that says type here, and then when you're ready, you can hit enter, or you can click on that up arrow button to submit it into the chat. We do welcome questions and comments, and if you have any tech support issues, you could submit them there as well, and I'll do my best to help navigate it for you. Most problems with tech can just be solved by exiting and then re-entering the meeting room. Just a note. But let's all get the chat box going together now. You can type in your name, let us know where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation, your work or your role in Indian country. And while you guys are getting the chat box going, it is with great pleasure that I introduce today's webinar instructor, Russ Siegel. And Russ, I'm going to hand it off to you now.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Welcome, everybody. Shio Nagata. My name is Russ Siegel, and I'm going to be your guide for about the next hour and a half. I want to tell you a little story that has nothing to do with time management, but I think it's going to help us all. Back in the early 60s, my father was in the Navy. He was stationed at Norfolk, Virginia. And on his leave, he would drive home to Western North Carolina. It's about an 8-hour drive. Back in those days, it was closer to 9. And he had to be back by a specific time. He had to be back on board the ship. And he drove an old 1950 Ford. And this Ford had a short in the electric system, as 1950 Fords will do. And one night, as he's driving back in the dark, the headlights went out. He couldn't see a thing, but he got behind a car on this little 2-lane road that was headed in the same direction that he was, and he would get behind it and follow it, and every now and then his lights would come back on. And being the 1960s and not the 2020s, eventually the fellow who's driving in front of him pulls over and he says, "What are you doing? Your lights keep coming on and going off." And my dad explained the situation to him, and he said, "You know, I'm going right by the naval station. You stick with me, I'll get you there." So here's the deal. There are a few slides that I may not be able to see today, but you will. We're not sure why. This is the first time this has happened. I think because some of these slides are pretty graphic heavy. And Brooke and I were talking about this prior to going live. What I would like to do to kind of keep you engaged and help guide me down the road in case my headlights go out is every time I change to a new slide, if someone could just put a word in that slide that you see, maybe part of the headline in that slide. That's going to help make sure that I'm on track because I can see my slides on another device and I can keep rolling. We're going to keep going on down the road, no matter how dark it gets. And we're going to get through this together. So I'm relying on you to be my eyes in a couple of these situations here. All right. So I am Russ Siegel. I'm the CEO of a native CDFI located in Cherokee, North Carolina. I'm glad to see such a big crowd today. This is great. So you could spend the next hour and a half doing almost anything in the world. And I really appreciate you spending it with me. I'm going to honor that time because we're going to go through a lot of information. Like I said, these slides are going to be pretty content rich. They are very graphic heavy. You have a download down in the file section in the bottom left. I encourage you, go ahead and download today's slide deck so that you can refer back to it. You want to hang on to this one. I've also got a few extra goodies in the participant handout on time management. I'll tell you about how all this came about in just a second, but I want you to think about this. We are going to go through a lot of information today, so I would love it if we could just all focus, hang right in there with me for the next hour and a half. And here's the reason: if you came to me and you said, "Russ, I'm having difficulty managing my time. I'm having difficulty with procrastination, or I'm having difficulty with productivity or motivation, getting things done," you and I would sit down, we would look at your schedule, and we would craft some solutions for your particular needs. I would serve you the meal that you most want and need at that moment. What I'm asking you to do today is to belly up to a huge buffet. I'm going to give you so many different things today, and you're not going to want to eat everything on that buffet. You're going to want to pick and choose some things that work for you. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is pick a few things from today's presentation that you can implement immediately. Something that you can do right now, today, before you go home. Because the quicker you implement it, the longer it will stay with you. And if you try something and you don't like it, maybe you thought those Brussels sprouts looked great, but then you realize they're still Brussels sprouts. Go grab something else off the buffet and try that. So regardless of your position, regardless of whether you're a business owner, an executive, a leader, a future leader, or maybe just a leader in your department, or somebody who just wants to get more done with less stress, this is our time. This is your time. Years ago, I started to talk to people who were pretty successful because I realized that they probably made the mistakes that I was about to make. They were a few steps ahead of me on the path. They were walking ahead of me. So why would I want to make time-consuming, frustrating, and expensive mistakes when I could just learn from other people? And so I started putting together interviews and informal meetings, and I would talk to people who had quote unquote made it. People I thought were successful, not just in business, but in life. People who seemed to have it all together. And I started to talk to them about how do they manage their time. And I started to see a lot of similar answers. And then one day, I looked at this guy, not the guy with the Captain America t-shirt, that's me, but the guy standing beside me is my brother. He's 3 years younger than I am. He's taller, he's better looking, he's thinner, he's in better shape. He works out religiously. He's a lawyer. He just sold a law practice for $10 million. This guy's got it all together, except for one thing. He's had 3 heart attacks. He's had 3 heart attacks, and it only took one of those for me to realize that work was killing me. Work had been killing him as well. So he's in a place now in his life where he may never have to work again if he doesn't want to, but he's had 3 heart attacks. I did not want that to be me. So I ramped up this work. I really started talking to people about how I could get more done in less time. And they reminded me that I didn't have to do everything all at once, and that sometimes slower is better. That old tortoise and hare story, that the tortoise is slow and steady but wins the race. But there were a lot of other things that they kept telling me. Before I get to what they told me, I want to talk about what business owners and executives and community leaders and other people have been telling me for years about how they handle time. They keep saying, I don't have time to take a vacation. I can't leave anybody else in charge. I can't put this in somebody else's lap. I don't have time for blank. Maybe I don't have time for a hobby. I don't have time to play golf anymore. I can't even pick up my guitar to play anymore. I don't have time for my kids. I can't even make it to a soccer game or a baseball game. I don't have time for, and the way you finish that sentence is endless. I'm working harder, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not getting anywhere. I don't feel like I'm getting anything done. In fact, I'm feeling burned out. Some of our artists, many of our artists, tell me, I'm so busy trying to crank out work, just producing, producing, producing. I feel like I'm losing my creativity. I've got a powwow coming up, or I've got an art market coming up, I've got something coming up, and I've got to make so many baskets. I've got to make so many necklaces, or so many sets of earrings, or so many pots. I can't be creative. Or I don't have any money, so I have to do everything myself. Does this sound like something you've heard or something you have said yourself? If so, go ahead and put that in the chat. Give me a yes in the chat. If you've said anything on this list, or if you've heard anybody else say anything on this list, go ahead and give me a yes, because these are so common. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Look, confession is good for the soul. Confession is good for the soul. You probably said or heard more than one of these things, because a lot of these things run together. So in the last 25 years, I have talked, especially because we're a native CDFI, we work with small businesses. I've talked to a lot of small business owners, and I've started to catalog what are the things that I'm observing that maybe they're wasting time on. What are the things that I'm seeing? I'm not guessing. This is first-hand research. This is me going out and just writing down what I'm seeing over the last 25 years. And some of these might feel pretty common to you as well. Number one, they're working on non-money making issues. If you are a business owner in this group today, just give me a thumbs up, or give me a yes in the chat, because some of this is going to sound pretty familiar to you as well. Yeah, good. So we got some business owners here. Is it Kateri? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Um, so we're working on the necessary evils of our business. We've got to go to the bank. We've got to go to the post office. We've got to hire people. We've got to pick up inventory and turn it into finished products, or we've got to deliver products, or just any number of other things. We've got to do our taxes. Look, all of these things are essential to our business. But if I'm not good at bookkeeping, is that really the way I need to spend my time, learning how to be a bookkeeper? Or am I better off spending time on things that make me money, things that are in my core competency, and hire the things that I'm not good at? We sometimes work on a lot of non-essential tasks. And if you are just working in an office, if you're just working a travel job, you don't have a business of your own, you can relate to this as well, because you have a list of things you probably need to get done today. And in the pursuit of getting those things done, you probably had several little fires pop up that you had to go put out, several little things that came up that really didn't have anything to do with your job, but maybe you have experience in this. Maybe you've been there a lot longer, and somebody comes to you for advice or counsel, or somebody just asks you a question. These don't have anything to do with you getting your work done, but again, It's just one of those necessary evils of life that we've got to deal with. People think that networking, going to meetings, and hanging out on social media is being productive, and it is not. We're going to talk about that specifically here in a few moments, but there's a way to make these things work, and there's a way to just spend time that doesn't really get us anything, doesn't gain us anything, doesn't make us money, and it doesn't help us fulfill our purpose in life. We spend so much time on assumptions. I'm going to assume that you're getting that work done until the deadline hits, and I didn't ask you about it. I didn't follow up on it. And my assumption has left us both with no finished product. You didn't get that work done. You didn't get it done. Oh, you forgot about it. I didn't mention it. I assumed you were going to do it. I assumed that you were going to return that phone call. You assumed that I was going to follow up on an insurance request, or you assumed that I was going to. And again, by not following up, by just making assumptions and living in this world of assumptions, we waste so much time because now we've got to go back and do something from scratch, do it all over again. We have too many irons in the fire. This is actually you probably, if you've ever wondered where this comes from, this is a blacksmithing saying, and we've all used it over the years. But I actually got curious and wanted to go look it up, find out what was. If you have a fire, that fire that melts the iron burns at a certain temperature, and if you start to insert too much into the fire and heat it up, it cools the fire, which means that nothing heats up the way it's supposed to. And so it quite literally means we are trying to do too much and we're not getting anything done. So we all try to do too much. I don't care what your job is. This could be at work. This could be at home. We try to pile too many things into the short amount of time that we have. So many small business owners spend time trying to hide their idea from other people. Look, nobody is going to steal your idea. Nobody. There are almost 7 billion people on this planet, and I'll guarantee you that only a handful, and literally a handful, would ever care to do what you do the way you do it. You bring a unique value to the workplace. You bring a unique value to the world. And other people, let's face it, are just not that industrious. They don't have the get up and go necessary to steal your idea. You might think they're going to steal your idea, but they're not. Share that idea. The more you share that idea, here's what happens. When you share your idea, you become accountable to other people. And they finally say, hey, when are you coming out with that new design? When is that book going to be finished? When is that article going to be published? When is that car going to be finished that you're restoring? When is that landscaping going to be done? They start to ask questions that hold us accountable. So share those ideas. Put those things out there in the world. Otherwise, we're wasting time trying to hoard our ideas when we could be letting other people drive us forward. And for small business owners, folks, we're chasing customers who aren't really customers. They could be a pain in the you-know-what. They could be people who don't have any money. They could be people who talk a good game but will never write a check. They could be people whose opinion we think matters, and they don't. Let's not spend time on these little things. I want you to focus. Oh, and by the way, focus. Focus is an acronym. If you're having trouble staying in focus, just remember what it stands for. Focus stands for follow one course until success. Let me say that again. Follow one course until success. That's focus. We all need a little more focus, and focus actually will help us avoid some of these time management myths that stall our productivity. So let's do a little myth busting here. These are, again, some of the things that you've probably heard, some of the things that you might practice. We're gonna blow up some conventional wisdom. You've probably heard that you need a to-do list. Well, I'm going to tell you in just a few moments why a to-do list might be hurting your productivity. It might be killing your ability to manage your time. To-do lists, yeah, they could be necessary, but there's a better way to do it. than the way we've always done it. And I'm going to show you a better way to do to-do lists. Let's go down the list here. Mobile devices. I did a little digging, and just last night I found that the latest numbers from 2024, and trust me, Apple, Android, Google, they all track this number because they want to know. So your phone actually will tell these companies how much time you spend on your device. The average adult in America spends 4.37 hours, almost 4.5 hours a day, looking at that little screen. Now we think, oh, but I can text people. I can send a quick text and let people know where I am. I can reply to an email. I can return a phone call. Look, if there are any Gen Z folks in the audience, anybody Gen Z here, give me a yes in the chat. Gen Z, the phone is the least used app on the smartphone. They're not using it to make phone calls. They're using it to make TikTok videos. So let's not delude ourselves that the phone, that our mobile device is a productive mechanism for us. It is not. It's eating our time. Our filing systems are all wrong. And I'm going to show you in just a few moments that everything you've been taught about filing is wrong. You're going to be inspired to just redo every physical file, every computer file that you got. I'm going to tell you, computer files, it's tougher. I'm a digital hoarder myself. I'm going to give you a tool that really is good for a lot of things, but it's also good for digital hoarding. It's a good thing that it helps you sort things and find things. Otherwise, I would be really doing you a disservice. But there are better ways to do filing systems out there, both digital and physical. Email. I'm going to talk to you about how Sequoia Fund took to-do items and critical items out of the email stream. Email is a huge time suck. Part of the reason is that we use it like a chat feature, but I'll get to that in a moment. Deadlines. Oh my goodness. Folks, just because someone gives you a deadline does not mean it's the deadline. Believe it or not, the dirty little secret here is that if someone else gives you a deadline, your deadline could be hours, days, or even weeks ahead of their deadline. There is a deadline for you, and then there is a drop dead deadline for them. They want to make sure you meet your deadline so they can meet theirs. So I'm going to teach you how to deal with this. Some of the language that we can use just gets you off the hook, takes the pressure off, and it doesn't make you less of a person. Just saying, I don't have time for that. Look, every billionaire out there, every sports icon, every great actor, everybody who has ever achieved greatness in their field, whether it was pouring concrete or acting on a Broadway stage or playing in a major league stadium, it does not matter. They have found time for what's important. Is anybody else having any audio trouble? If you can hear me, give me a yes, please. Okay, good. Brandy, if you can still hear, you may want to log out and log back in. I just wanted to make sure it was not on my end. Thank you so much for everybody keeping me on the road. When the headlights go out, it might not just be my headlights. Somebody else's headlights might go out, and they need to follow along behind us. And it looks like Brooke's sending her message. Thank you so much. Okay, so we all have the same amount of hours in the day, same number of hours in the week. It's how we allocate those hours. It's how we tune those hours into the thing that we want to do the most and the thing that we want to get the best at. But let's not confuse allocating time to get really good at something with needing to be perfect at something. Perfection is often the enemy of done. D-U-N-E, not D-U-M-B. Perfection is the enemy of getting it done at all. Look, when my kids were little, they wanted to mow the grass. They wanted to learn how to drive the tractor and mow the grass and run the weed eater and all that good stuff. And they did, and they did a great job. And then my nephews came along, and they were younger. They wanted to, the kids like money. They know what they can do with money, and so they wanted to earn a few bucks mowing my lawn. Did it get done the way I would have done it? No, no. I had a certain way I liked mowing my lawn. But look, having them mow my grass bought me 2.5 hours a week. It didn't have to be perfect to be finished. And I could overlook the little strip of grass that didn't get hit, or the little things up against the side of the house that didn't get trimmed. I could overlook that because it was done. And this is my favorite. I saved the best for last. Here's one of my favorite time management myths of all time. Now, remember, I said confession is good for the soul. I am not going to ask you to confess to this publicly. I'm not going to ask you to put a yes. But if you've said this, or if you've heard this, I want you to think, yes, it's true. People who say, "Oh, I'll save that for later. I work best under pressure." That's one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves and tell other people. No, you don't. You don't work well under pressure. You're a jackass who makes life hard for everybody else. That's what I want to tell people. I used to think that I could work well under pressure. Now, there is a little something that gives us a little bit of pressure that actually does help us. I'm going to mention it to you here in just a second. But the whole notion of I want to let things pile up on me to the point where I just can't handle it anymore, and then I'm going to, boom, I'm going to knock it out. I'm going to get this done. Big lie. Big lie. People don't work well under pressure. They make mistakes. We make mistakes. We drop the ball. We have gaps in what we're supposed to do. And it's not good quality work. You never see a surgeon who says, "Look, I've got a 12-hour surgery coming up, but I think I'm going to have a nice meal and take my kids out to a movie. Go ahead and prep the patient. I'll come in. I'll knock it out in the last 8 hours or the last 4 hours." No, the surgeon knows exactly how long they need to do that particular surgery, whether it's heart surgery, replacing a knee, anything. And they're going to allocate time for that. We don't work well under pressure. Now, remember, I said there's a little something that helps us. And it's called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law, I always get my P's mixed up. Parkinson's law says that a task will fill whatever time we allot for it. So I want you to think about this. If you went to college, if you went to high school, you still may have nightmares about that paper that you didn't turn in. Just now you can't graduate. It could be 40 years later, you're still having that dream. Here's the deal. You were probably given an entire semester to do a project. You might have been given a month to write a paper. Now, were you like my wife and you started the night you got the assignment? Or were you like me, who wrote it 2 days ahead of time, or maybe even the night before? See, my wife is one of those people who started the day she got the assignment because she wanted the A. I'm a pretty good writer. I would sometimes just let it slide. If it came down to writing a paper or shooting hoops, I was going to play some basketball. So I'm out there playing basketball, never thinking about this paper. Because when I did think about the paper, I'm thinking, I can write it a couple hours. I can write it in one night. I'd pull an all-nighter. I'd write the paper, and I'd get a C. Maybe I'd luck out and get a B. But for me, a C was okay, not for my wife. You see, Parkinson's law says that if you have 2 months to write the paper, you'll take 2 months to write the paper. But if you give yourself 2 nights to write the paper, that's how long it will take. If you think about the tasks that you have forcibly crammed into a short time frame, you have subjected yourself to Parkinson's law. You have decided consciously that you're going to work under pressure. Now, you might have forgotten about a deadline. something might have snuck up on you. You might have had a family emergency. We are all capable of working under pressure. That's not what I'm talking about. We are all capable of just, let's drink that pot of coffee and let's crank out the work. No, what I am talking about are the people who, as a habit, as a rule, believe this is how they work best. Well, you're going to upset a lot of people around you. You're not going to be a very likable person. People are going to get annoyed with you, and your work is not going to be great as a rule. So this actually causes us to eat up time, and it costs people around you mental anguish because they think, are you going to get this done? Are you going to make the team look bad because you didn't get this finished? Are we all going to be held responsible for you not doing your part? And that kind of mental anguish slows everyone else down. There are some time vampires out there. We're going to dig into each one of these, but there are vampires out there that will just suck all the time away from us. And we talked a little bit about email, but we're going to dig into email. Meetings. How many of you love a good meeting, especially a good meeting with no purpose, no time constraints, and no agenda? Oh, yeah, we love meetings. I know a lot of people who believe that if they've had a day full of meetings, they've been productive. They haven't done anything. Interruptions. Again, one of those necessary evils. This is kind of built into my daily routine. I know that I'm going to have a lot of people pop in my office and ask me questions, whether it's staff members, it might be someone from code enforcement down the hall, it might be someone from the Department of Commerce in the tribe, it might be a client. I've got some baseball memorabilia in my office, and I've got one client who's a huge baseball fan, and I know that if he shows up, there goes an hour of my day. And it's okay. It's okay. I love to talk baseball with him. He's now a tribal council member, and he just loves to, and sometimes he'll get up after an hour. We've talked baseball. We've solved all of the problems with new rules and everything else. And he'll say, I'll need to call you later because I forgot why I came by your office. And so I actually build some of that into my workday because I know some of these things are gonna happen. Multitasking. We're going to talk about the dangers of multitasking, the myth of multitasking, and why it is such a huge time vampire. How disorganization can suck all the time away from our day. It can suck all the time out of our lives. Why online research is not. Online research is not. And how we can steady ourselves and make sure that we stay on task and on focus as we go online. Half work. We'll talk a little bit more about half work. We're going to dig into this, but basically this is, and I'm going to use our artists as one of these examples. We've got one artist, and Betty knows that I pick on her. I don't see her on here, but Betty knows that I pick on her. And Betty is so talented. She's a carver, both in wood and stone. She is a bead worker. She's a basket maker. She's a potter. She makes clothing. She is so talented. But if you go to Betty's home, if you look in her studio, it is full of half work, things that she got bored with, and she stopped and moved on. So she would stop in the middle of this necklace, and she would go to do earrings, and she would maybe do a couple pairs of earrings, and then she would stop and go do some carving. But she would get halfway through the carving, and she gets bored, and she would go make some clothing. And so bouncing from one medium to another, she's just got all this half work. So when she has an event that she needs to prepare for, she has to stop what she's doing and she has to go back and do the other half of all this stuff. She has to go back and do all the completion, and it just eats up so much of her time. All right, so let's dig in here. Email, one of the issues that we have with email is that we treat it like a chat function. Let's say the mailman drives by your house 40 times a day, and every time your mailman sticks a letter in your mailbox, you stop what you're doing, you run out to the mailbox, you check the mail, you bring it back in, you open it up, you read it. Maybe it's a bill, you fret over the bill. You can't do anything about it right now. So now all it's doing is eating up mental energy. Maybe it's a coupon. You go, oh, wow, this is a great coupon. I could go there for lunch, save me some money. But 40 times a day, you run to the mailbox. You wouldn't do that. But yet we do that with our email. One of the things that I would encourage everybody to do, no matter what else you eat from this buffet, choose today to only check your email at certain times of the day. Now, there are some people, there used to be an old Dr. Pepper ad. Dr. Pepper used to advertise with a clock, and it was 10, 2, and 4. 10, 2, and 4 is when you stop and have a Dr. Pepper. 10, 2, and 4 because you need a little pick-me-up in the morning, you need a little pick-me-up in the afternoon, you need a little something to get you through the end of the day, so have a Dr. Pepper. And that was their big branding campaign in the early part of the 20th century so that they could get people hooked on Dr. Pepper. But let me get you hooked on an email response schedule. Try 10, 2, and 4. If you do 3 times a day, you stop running to the mailbox every time the postman drives by. You're responding to email on your schedule. You're not letting other people dictate when you stop what you're doing and check your email. To help you do this, create an autoresponder, whether you use Gmail, Outlook, or anything else. We still have some clients who are using AOL. Whatever your email server is, you have an autoresponder capability in your settings. Go find it. Create an autoresponder that every single person gets when they send an email. So let me tell you what my email autoresponder said. I've turned it off because we've kind of gotten things under control. I don't really need it anymore. So this is not a forever solution. This is something you're going to do to help retrain people. All those people who want you to stop your day, stop your life, to answer them, an autoresponder is going to help you train them. And this is what my autoresponder said. Thank you for contacting me. In order to help you better and respond to more customer and client issues, I am only checking email at, now my times were not 10, 2, and 4. I actually did 9, 2, and 4:30. And I said, I'll check 9, 2, and 4:30 at these times. I will check your email and respond to you at the next available time. If this is an emergency, and here's the key, if this is an emergency, please call me immediately at 828-359-5003. That's my phone number. I gave them my phone number. Do you know how many people picked up the phone and called me because it was an emergency? Over a 3-month period, I had one. Turns out it wasn't an emergency, but they thought it was. I had one person in 3 months take me up on that offer. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, when people email you, it is not an immediate need. And by saying, I only check my email 3 times a day, and if it's noon, the next time I check, it's going to be 2. I will respond to you at the next available time. That started to retrain people to not expect an immediate answer. When you train people because you're giving an immediate response, you stop your day and respond, you're training them to expect that. Yes, there are going to be people who send you a message. Maybe it's a council member, maybe it's the chief's office. They need an immediate response. Maybe council's in session. We've had this before. Council's in session and they're looking for a number from us. They just need hey, how many loans did you do last quarter? Look, I can stop and answer that one. I'm not going to make them wait on me. Use some discretion, use some judgment here. But again, this is really for those people who just want you to stop everything because you've got them trained that you'll respond. When you reply, set your default to reply. Don't set your default to reply all. And we've all gotten these messages, folks. Somebody says, happy birthday, Celeste. Somebody just sends this big group message out and you sent Celeste a card, you sent Celeste flowers, you greeted her this morning, you've told her happy birthday, you gave her a hug, you said, oh, I'm so happy that it's your birthday. You've done the birthday thing, but now you've got 50 replies all day long wishing Celeste a happy birthday. This is one of the things I don't like about group text messages, because you can't get out of those things. You just, you're stuck. You're stuck. So don't reply all. If you reply in a group text, just reply to the sender. Now, we have exceptions at Sequoia Fund. If we're doing an email vote that requires documentation, we require everyone to reply all, but they just reply with a one-word answer. They don't have to send a lengthy message. Everybody knows it's coming, but when it's done, it's done. If you reply in an email, if you send an email, 5 sentences maximum. My rule is 5 sentences. If it's going to take you more than 5 sentences to do an email, pick up the phone, call. You can email back and forth all day, or you can have a 3-minute phone call and just nail things down. So again, if it takes you more than 5 sentences to explain something, you're probably going to lose people anyway. And we've done this, right? I've done this myself. Somebody sends directions, or they send a link, and Brooke, I'm going to tell on myself here for a second, because Brooke has even sent me, here's the link, and I'll send an email back that says, where's the link? I didn't see the link. And then I feel like a fool, but I am what I am. People don't read emails. This is one of the reasons Sequoia Fund started using video during COVID, because we could say something in a 3-minute video that people would never read in an email, and it got through. So just pick up the phone. Don't make yourself have to go back and forth with people because they didn't read an email, and try to explain things that way. So here's some quick hits. There are basically 4 different ways to reply to an email. One is just to reply. Again, you got your 5-sentence rule. Don't reply all. You just go ahead and reply to it. The next is to forward it to someone else. And we do this all the time. People know that if I'm forwarding an email to them, it's something that's not in my purview. It's not my decision to make. I'll send it. I get emails all the time from people who want a loan decision. They want to talk about a loan. I just send it directly to our loan officer. He knows to respond. She knows to respond. They can pick up the phone. They know that, hey, Russ got this email. I'm going to go ahead and make this call. I'm going to reach out to this customer. If it is, somebody's contacted us with a loan issue, I don't want that person to have to explain their issue to 4 different people. So a lot of times if they send me an email, I will forward it with instructions. I'll say, hey, Faith, can you look into this? I think this is the issue. Why don't you look into the account and verify it, and then contact the customer? Okay, that way she's not on a wild goose chase. She kind of knows what Russ is looking for, what Russ is thinking, and then she can confirm or deny, and then she gets back with the customer. Again, quick. We're going to forward with instructions. I'm not going to have anything. I'm not going to go back and forth with the client. I'm going to let somebody else do that, because I'm not going to step on their toes and do their job for them. Because if I'm doing their job, one of us is not necessary. Or you can just delete it. Now, I know a lot of people who spend a lot of time huffing and puffing about, oh, I get junk email. I get 50 junk emails a day. Well, you can spend all that time unsubscribing, and federal law is getting ready to be passed. I'm absolutely certain that this will pass within the next year, probably by the time this Congress is out. There is a bill right now in front of Congress that's going to make it easier for you to be able to opt out with one click from your email. So if you get a junk email, you just click the button, you'll be out. As it stands right now, you can spend a lot of time going through the links and unsubscribing, or you can just bulk delete this stuff. Just get it out of the way. Don't waste any mental energy on it. One of the things that we did at Sequoia Fund that I think worked better than just about anything else, and I'm going to give you Asana, but you can use Microsoft Teams, you can use Monday, you can use ClickUp, you can use Trello. There's dozens of different tools out there that are really project management tools, we just happened to land on Asana. I kept hearing this in podcasts. I kept hearing people I respect talking about how they use Asana. And so we went to Asana. You can get a free version that if you have a really small team, it will work for you. If you have a larger team, you can get a a nonprofit subscription. It's steep discount. But Asana helped us get to-do items out of the email chain, because if you're like me, you get hundreds of emails every day. I don't just get 40. I mean, there are literally days when I get 140 emails and up. If someone on my staff sends me a critical to-do item in email and I don't jump on it right away, there's a good chance that it's going to drop below the screen, or below the fold, as we say in the old newspaper biz, below the fold. It's going to drop down, and if I don't see it, it's going to flounder. It's not going to get done. So in order to keep these things out of the email stream, they put these things in Asana. Asana then sends me an email that says, Hope has a task for you. She needs this done by 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. Now, Asana has the task of reminding me. Asana will push notifications to my phone. It will pop up on my calendar. It will block off time on my calendar. And Asana will remind me that Hope needs this done by 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. Hope doesn't have to continuously remind me about this. So I think if you get a lot of to-do items and you maybe let things slip through the cracks, Asana or a similar tool is a fantastic way to avoid that. Yes, Melanie, thank you so much for affirming that. If you use it Asana is fantastic. It will keep your projects on track. We use this for onboarding new employees. We use this for tracking loan servicing for other organizations, so that they can go in and they can say, okay, all these boxes are checked. This is where Sequoia Fund is in this loan underwriting process. They don't have to call our loan officer and waste their time. They can just click into Asana and they can say, okay, well, they're 70% finished and they're waiting for these documents from this client. So now if the client calls and says, Sequoia Fund's not working fast enough, this other lender can remind them, hey, they're waiting for some tax documents from you. They can only move as fast as you allow them. So it's been fantastic on a lot of different levels for us. And again, if you have a really small team, it's free. So let's talk about meetings. We all love meetings. I've just got some basic commandments here. These are the 7 commandments of meetings. I didn't have 10. I've just got 7 because it's all I needed. But we hate meetings. Deep down, we all do. In fact, when I first came to Sequoia Fund in 2009, I quickly got a nickname. And again, confession's good for the soul. People started calling me skedaddles, because if I was in a meeting and I wasn't producing anything, I wasn't necessary to the meeting, and I was wasting my time, I would get up and leave. I just skedaddle. And I realized it was making people upset that I was leaving. Why should he get up to leave a meeting? I don't get to get up and leave a meeting. So a little pro tip here: if you leave a pen and a notebook and you get up and leave the meeting, they don't get mad, they get worried. Oh, wow, Russ never came back to the meeting. I hope he's okay. It is perfectly okay to get up and leave a meeting. What you're doing, if you say, why are we having this meeting? If you say, what is the purpose of this? Could this not have been an email? If you just get up and leave, you are saying, you are doing what everyone else in the room wants to say and do, but they don't have the guts. If you are in a meeting with no agenda, you can almost guarantee that that meeting is going to go off the rails. Even if it's just a 1 bullet point agenda, you need to have an agenda. We have a standing meeting, staff meeting, 10:30 every Monday, whether I'm there or not. Everybody gets together. They don't need me, but there's an agenda. We do kind of a round robin. Everybody talks about their weekend. We're a social bunch, and everybody talks about what movie they saw or what series they're binging on Netflix, those kinds of things. Where did they eat? What new restaurant did they try? All those things are important. I mean, those are team bonding type things. But then we get around to, okay, where is everybody this week? What are the things that are coming up that maybe it's on my plate, but I'm going to need 3 other people to support me with this? And how can we make this happen? So we always have an agenda, but limit your scope. Don't try to cover everything under the sun. Don't try to do everything, because if you try to do everything, you'll get nothing done. That agenda doesn't need to be more than about 3 to 5 topics long. And set yourself a time limit. When I started talking to people who were successful, ran successful companies, successful departments, and ran successful meetings, they all told me the same thing. You set time limits. If you set an hour for a meeting, and at the end of the hour, you're only halfway through your agenda, you stop the meeting and you give people the option. We can take this amount of time, we can extend our meeting by this amount of time, and we can finish, or we can schedule another meeting. But you never just assume that you can run over your time limit. So always set that time limit. Always get your team's permission or other people's permission. Look, it's going to take us another 15 minutes if we just knock it out. Maybe a discussion took longer than you planned. That's okay. It happens. So set those time limits and keep those time limits. Smaller is better. A smaller agenda, a smaller time limit, a smaller team. Jeff Bezos at Amazon, he doesn't run many meetings at Amazon anymore. He's got bigger fish to fry. But when he was running meetings, he had what he called the 2 pizza rule. He never had more people in a meeting than they could feed with 2 pizzas. If it got bigger than that, it was not going to go well. When the pizza's gone, the meeting's over, by the way. A lot of people do a stand-up meeting. So they'll not only set a time limit, they'll say, okay, we're going to stand, because standing up, it really incentivizes you to keep those time limits. People start to shift around and dance around. They get a little bit uncomfortable and they want to sit down. So having a stand-up meeting, having what we call huddles, is sometimes better than having a meeting. This is a rule that I learned on a lot of boards that I sat on, and it kept coming up time and time again. And people didn't always phrase it this way, but this is the way that I started to phrase it, and it makes a lot of sense. You either give, get, or get out. If you're not contributing something to the meeting, if you're not getting something from it, there's no reason for you to be there. You are taking up oxygen in that room. Skedaddle. Get up and leave. You're doing what everybody else wishes they could do. Sometimes people will invite you to a meeting thinking, oh, I've got to invite Anthony because Anthony is always at these meetings. Well, Anthony may be always at the meetings because he gets invited. He just doesn't want to say no. He has no reason to be there. It's wasting his time. And so it's okay to say, what role do I play in this meeting? I've got a really full schedule. What do you need me for specifically? Asking that question will sometimes get you out of the meeting altogether. And it is perfectly okay, because it doesn't say, I want out of this meeting. What it says is, I either want to be prepared for this or I don't need to be there. Which is it? Tell me what specifically you need from me in this meeting. I have a really busy day. I just need to know. And if they say, you know what, it turns out we really don't need you, Anthony, go on about your workday, then that's music to our ears. That's what you want to hear. Every meeting, though, needs a leader. It needs a champion. It needs somebody who drives the meeting forward, keeps everybody on task, stays on topic, and holds to your time limits. You can assign that leader if it's not a de facto leader, if it's not the person with seniority or whatever, but there's got to be somebody there who's in charge. I do like a good flat organization, very, there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of good things happen, but not everything has a start and an end time on time unless you have somebody who's assigned that role. Also assign accountabilities. What good is it to have a meeting if you talk about things that never get done? So not only assign those accountabilities, but how are you going to bring those accountability items back up at the next meeting to make sure they get done? What is your tool for that? Maybe it's Asana. Maybe it is a visual cue. Maybe you have a whiteboard in your office or a chalkboard or something that you can track your progress on, and maybe people just go by their task and they check it off, and now we know everybody's done. We don't have to have another meeting to do that. But aside from meetings, there's one thing that we all love, and that's interruptions. We love a good interruption. Uh, and these interruptions don't have to be in person. They could be through email, they could be phone interruptions. But again, if you have the capacity to let that go to voicemail, if you have the ability in your job to answer emails at certain times of the day, to return phone calls at certain times of the day, and I'm going to talk to you about the perfect time to return phone calls. There is a perfect time to return phone calls. If you have the ability to do that, now if you're sitting at the front desk and you're the receptionist and you're taking all the phone calls, you can't really do this. This doesn't apply to you. Skip over this part of the buffet, go on down the line. But if you have the ability to do this, this is going to help you manage interruptions better than just about anything else, because now you are in control of when people barge into your office, when people get an email response, or when people talk to you on the phone. You need to make your agenda known. Every morning when I go into the office, I sit down with our she's our office manager. She started out kind of as my assistant, but her roles have expanded over time. And I sit down with her because she needs to know where I am and what I'm doing. If Russ sneaks out the back door to run to a meeting, she needs to be able to tell people what time I'll be back and when they can contact me. And I don't ever want to just ghost people or disappear. So make sure people know that if you have 3 webinars this afternoon, they know why your door is closed. They know that you're going to be in webinars, you're going to be in online meetings. They're not just going to barge in and start talking to you. By making your agenda known, you're managing interruptions because you're heading them off before they ever get to your door. We also need to ask, is this urgent or important? If something is urgent, sure. Like, no, if there's a fire in the kitchen at the office, probably a good idea to ask the person on the phone if you can call them back later. Is it important? Just because it's important does not necessarily mean it warrants an interruption. Is it something that can wait? One of the rules that I have given my staff, because you reach a certain level of leadership and people just come to you because you have this, it's what's called referent power. Referent power just says that based on your position, I've got to ask you all these questions. I've got to ask you for permission. I've got to ask you're okay. I've got to get your stamp of approval before I can do this. And it comes with the territory. So what I have asked everybody to do is I have used something that the great football coach Lou Holtz introduced me to. And that is, don't bring an issue or a problem to me unless it's written down. And you need to write down 3 possible solutions. Now, this is before you ever knock on my door, send me an email, pick up the phone. Write down the problem. Write down 3 possible solutions. Do this a couple of times, and you'll probably find out that Russ doesn't need you. Russ doesn't need to answer this question. You don't need Russ, in other words. You don't need to interrupt Russ because Russ hired you because you're smart, you're bright, you're intelligent, you're quick, you're innovative, you are resourceful. If I've hired people because they have a big brain, I want to encourage them to use it. It's not that I don't want to answer the question, but if we're not developing people, we're killing people, we're losing people. And this is part of not just a time management philosophy on my part, this is part of a development philosophy for our entire staff. I want people to use those big, beautiful brains they have. Is it urgent? Is it important? Write it down. Write down 3 possible solutions. And then if you need Russ, then you can bring it to Russ. Just like I was saying before, I build time into my schedule for planned interruptions. I have some buffer time. I don't schedule every minute of my day. I leave myself a little bit of time. If I think something's going to take 3 hours to do, uh, I might give myself 5 hours to do it or 4 hours to do it. I'll build a little buffer in there because I know things are always going to come up. And that's okay. If we plan for them, they're less disruptive. They are interruptive, but not disruptive. By the way, some studies have shown that every time you stop what you're doing for an interruption, you lose 17 minutes of productivity. If you are in deep work, if you're focused on a spreadsheet, if you're focused on a project, if you're focused on something, and you are in deep work, if someone interrupts you and you allow that interruption, it breaks your train of thought. It breaks your productivity for a full 17 minutes because now your train is completely off track. You got to get it back on track. So what I have started to do and what I've done for years, and look, again, we're social. We're social creatures. If COVID taught us anything, it's that we crave to be social. But there is a defense. There's a defensive mechanism that you can use that is helpful, but it also stops interruptions in their tracks. We have some folks in my office. I'm not going to name names because I love them dearly. I couldn't survive without them. They're fantastic. But they do like to just pop into my office and tell me about their kids, their grandkids, where they ate last weekend. There are things that they just love to pop in and say. If I am in deep work, if I'm busy and it's outside that planned interruption zone that I have, I look up from my work and I say, well, how can I help you? All right, that is a signal. I don't really need anything. Okay, if we can talk about this later, can I come and see you after 3 o'clock? But the how can I help you? Again, it's a two-pronged instrument. It stops that interruption. It lets you get back to your work, but it also says that that person, if there is something I really need, Russ is sincere. He will stop to help me. So if it's an issue that they do need help with, I don't want them to let it fester. I don't want them to let it linger. So I look up, I say, how can I help you? If they just start yakking, I come back with the how can I help you defense. Now, one of the most powerful words you can say, one of the most powerful words you can learn to say with a level of comfort, this is what my grandmother taught me. She said, no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. So if you need to say no, say no. On the time management handout, on the PDF handout, this is just a single page handout. There are some options on that handout. Please go ahead and download that, print that out, keep that with you. Use it as a little guide because there are some ways that can help you say no if you're not comfortable just saying no. Sometimes no is very abrupt. It sounds kind of snarky, but it is a complete sentence. There are ways for you to say no without being uncomfortable. You could say, I don't have time for that today, but I could get to it on Friday. Could I do that for you on Friday? In fact, 5 minutes before this program started, I got a text from one of my staff members who said, hey, do we have a title for this program that we're running in October? Travel and tourism is going to need this. Do we have a title? And I said, I'm getting ready to start a webinar. Can I get this to you after 3:30, 4 o'clock? Oh yeah, absolutely. It was not urgent, but she sure used a lot of exclamation points in her question. She wanted to know, can I get this now? She didn't need it now. Learn to say no. You can always learn to say later. One of the things that we do in life, it's not just work related, folks. We subject ourselves to life interruptions. Well, do you want to go to Aunt Mary's this weekend? Well, I love Aunt Mary, but Aunt Mary drives me crazy. I don't feel like I can say no because it's Aunt Mary, right? So we go, or we get invited to a kid's birthday party down the street, or we get invited to a cousin's birthday party or something like that. Here's a way to say no without saying what we normally say. What do we normally do? Here's what we normally do. We say, Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, we can make it. I can make it. I can be there. And then we spend the rest of our day, the rest of our week trying to come up with an excuse to get out of it. That eats up mental energy. That eats up our time. Here's something better. Thank you so much for the invitation. I don't think I'm going to have time to be able to do that. So put me down as a no. But look, if something changes, I will let you know. And let's hope something changes. I'll try to be there, but I got to say no right now. Look, that says this person's trying, but I would rather have a hard no than a yes that ends up being a no-show. Our tribal hospital just published a report that they had 800 plus no-shows in the last month. That's incredible. These are professional medical services providers who are left twiddling their thumbs and rearranging their days and wasting their time and all the things that go along with that. Just because somebody said, yes, I'll be at that appointment, and then didn't show up. There's this huge myth out there, multitasking. My wife, Lord love her, she's a great woman. She's just retired, and all her life she has fancied herself a multitasker. I got to tell you, she's not. None of us really are. All of our brains have a little acorn-sized thing right in the center of our skull. It's called the amygdala. The amygdala, that little acorn-sized part of our brain, keeps us blinking, swallowing, breathing, keeps our heart beating, keeps the blood pumping. It's our autonomic nervous system. It wakes us up in the middle of the night when the alarm goes off or the baby cries or something goes thump in the night. That is a multitasking marvel. That little tiny thing multitasks. The rest of all that gray matter up there is built to do one thing at a time. Now, if you don't believe me, try drinking a cup of coffee, putting on your makeup, sending a text, and driving to work. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Please don't. Please don't. But how many accidents have been caused by people trying to multitask? How many things have happened at home because people try to do too many things at one time? The master list gives us this idea that we can get a lot of things done at one time. Well, we might end up with a lot of half work. So here's the way the master list works. I'm going to put a few things on my to-do list that I'm going to try to get done today. Oh, but I just thought about 3 other things. Oh, I just thought of 4 other things. I just thought of 10 other things that need to go on this to-do list. So I'm going to create this big list. I'm going to carry this huge list around with me. And as I get this list done, I'll mark it off. And eventually, I'll finish the list. All right, I'm going to ask you quiz time here in the chat. What happens to that list? What happens to that master list that you said, I'm going to carry it around with me. I'm going to do all these things. And once I get them all marked off, I'll be finished with the list. I see Tina's typing. I see Celeste is typing. A couple others. Yes, you can lose it, which is awful, or it keeps growing. Those are, yes, those are absolutely, thank you, Sheila. Look, nobody expects that list to become this Leviathan, this huge sea monster that rises up out of the deep and swallows us whole. But that's what happens. That's what happens. I love these responses. I love the, bury the list and start another one. Because when that sea monster gets so big, you realize I'm never going to get this done. I'm throwing it away. I'm going to start over. I'm going to stick my head in the sand. I'm too scared to even look at it for days. That is a great response. Yes, the list either gets big, or it gets bigger, and you're afraid to look at it. It just isn't worth it. And the reason it isn't worth it is because of the Zygarnik effect. Zygarnik was a Russian psychologist who came up with this, and you can Google this. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here. I'll give you the quick wiki here. Zygarnik posited that when we have tasks that are on our brain but they don't get done, they exert a mental strain on us that causes us to lose focus on other things that we're doing. It causes us to lose focus on other important things. So if you are driving down the road and someone cuts you off and that's all you're thinking about, right? Now you drive past the grocery store. You forgot to stop and pick up milk and bread on the way home. Maybe you drove home and forgot to stop and pick up the kids because you focused so much on that one thing that everything else got blocked out. When you have an overload and when things get so oppressive, that list gets so big, Zygarnik effect kicks in and it causes us to not be able to do the other things that we need to be doing. Okay, so the list becomes counterproductive. And yes, Kendra says it turns into sublist. Yes, you shut down, Terry. Absolutely, shut down. Jamie, yes, the recording, there is a recording of this webinar. It will be, I'll let Brooke cover that at the end, but yes, it's on the Native Learning Center's webinar. So thank you for asking. The list actually becomes counterproductive. It shuts us down. The Zygarnik effect takes over. If you've thought about doing something, maybe you thought about, oh, I've got to clean the gutters. I got to clean the gutters. And you didn't clean the gutters. Now, the next time it rains, that's all you can think about. You can't think about fixing dinner. You can't think about cleaning up the house. You can't think about fixing the car. You can't think about getting to work because you're thinking, oh, I should have cleaned the gutters. I didn't do it. And prioritizing really doesn't help us because we prioritize things the wrong way. Sometimes we prioritize things by I'm going to put the quickest hits at the top of the list. I'm going to put the things that I can get done because I just need some momentum. I'm going to put those things at the top of the list, and then once I've got some momentum, I will keep moving. Well, what happens is we do the things, the 5 or 6 things at the top of the list that didn't take a lot of time, but now we're exhausted, and we just don't have time for the rest of it. So we're shutting down again. So a friend of mine taught me the ABC method of prioritization. Every day, he takes, now having a master list is not the end of the world. I'll admit, I've got a master list myself. I keep everything on it, but yes, we break that thing down into the subcategory list or whatever. But I break that thing down, and I'm only going to put about 5 things a day on my list. And the way I'm going to prioritize those things is I'm going to prioritize the things that are the most important, and I'm going to list them as A tasks. A tasks, I don't care if the building's on fire, these A tasks have to be done before I go home. B tasks are things that have been on the list. It'd be great to get these things knocked out. They're going to have to be done in the next day or two. If they don't get done today, they turn into an A task tomorrow. So I'm always methodically working down that list. C tasks are those buffer tasks. I'll call those buffers because if I have time to get it, I'll knock it out. I'll get it done. Look, half work is going to kill us all. Finish something. Finish what you're doing. It will make you feel much more productive. Don't leave it sitting there because Zygarnik will come in after you. She'll come and get you. Lock the door. It's okay to stop what you're doing and just lock everything down. Focus on what you're doing. The 3D rule. Does this have to be done by me? Does this have to be done by me? And what I'm going to ask about a task is I'm either going to do it right now. Let's think about checking the mail. You go home in the afternoon, you check the mail, you got a big pile of mail. There are 3 things in that mail. They're the junk mail, right? You can ditch that. There are the things that maybe your spouse needs to work on, or maybe somebody else in the house needs to work on or answer. You can delegate that and hand it off to somebody else. Or you just need to do it. If you can do it in 2 minutes, do it right then. Don't let it sit around. If it's paying a bill, if it is, or maybe you don't send the bill, maybe you just write the check and put the bill by the door. If you can do it in 2 minutes, do it right then. Do it, delegate it, or ditch it. If it doesn't have to be done by you, delegate it or ditch it. We sometimes will have a sedimentary filing system, which means things pile up. And the oldest, it's just like the Grand Canyon. The oldest rocks are on the bottom. You really got to dig down to find those old fossils. Well, filing systems are the same, but I'm gonna teach you a filing system that if you employ it, it's going to have immediate results. Don't think of your filing system like a filing system. Think of your filing system like a tool shed, like a workbench. Everything has a home. If you've been in one of those workshops where there's an outline on the pegboard for the hammer, this is where the hammer goes. This is where the this tool goes, this is where that tool goes. All right, a home for everything. We spend so much of our time looking for things. Keep your like things with like things. If you have financial documents, keep those with financial documents. Don't file them with your medical documents. Don't file your medical documents with your mortgage documents. Like with like, it makes things so much easier to find. We keep our client files with client files. We don't intermingle those with our HR files or facilities files or anything else like that. File things by frequency of use. The things, if you use the hammer every day, if you use a planer every day in your workshop, that planer needs to be within arm's reach. It doesn't need to be something that you have to go and look for every day. Files that you use, whether they're digital or physical, keep those things in the front. It doesn't have to be alphabetical. It doesn't have to be chronological. But if you keep it by frequency of use, it's always going to be right where you need it. Now, the Japanese use what they call a 5S system. They started doing this back in the 60s in manufacturing. This is when they really started to turn it on and come after us in terms of auto manufacturing. They use the 5S system. It's a sort. We're going to put everything in its place, like for like, a home for everything. We're going to set it in order, which means I'm not just going to put the hammer on the wall. I'm going to draw the line around it to make sure everybody knows that's where the hammer goes. We're going to shine it up. If you keep things in good working order, if you keep the dust off your lamp, if you keep dust off your printer, if you keep the cobwebs off of your computer keyboard, if you keep things in good working order, you're going to pay more attention to them. It helps you save time. It makes you feel better about your work. We're going to standardize things. I'm not going to have a lot of stuff over here in imperial measurements and a lot of things that I have to, these are metric. I don't use metrics. I have to go find something else to use. Standardize everything. Standardize, if you're going to keep files in PDF format, keep them in PDF format. If you keep things together like that, then you can sustain the order. If you make sure that every day before you go home, the stapler goes right where the stapler goes. Your pens, your markers, your pencils, whatever it is, goes right back where their home is. And again, I'm going to pick on my wife. She comes home every day, but her stuff never has a home. She's always looking for her keys. She's always looking for her phone. She's always looking for her purse. She's always looking for her computer. If everything that she has a home, like she has a home, then she would spend less time looking for it. If you use Google Drive, if you use OneNote, if you use Evernote, anything that you can use to help you store things and then look for them later, that's going to help you create that filing system. And electronic files are great because now all we've got to do is remember one word in that document, and our electronic filing systems now are going to go out and find that document for us. We don't really have to file these things anymore. But the temptation is to don't file it. Well, I'm gonna tell you, you need to file. When you go online, this is a picture of the Sunbeam kitchen timer that sits on my desk. It doesn't plug in, it doesn't upload, download, it doesn't have batteries. If I need to go online, I'm going to set myself a time limit. I'm going to know exactly what I'm going online to look for. I'm going to work in short bursts, and I'm going to follow the 20/20 schedule. If I'm working online, I'm going to work online for 20 minutes, and I'm going to look up for 20 seconds. That timer's going to go off, and I have to look up for at least 20 seconds. This is good for your eyes. It's good for your brain. Maybe you stand up, stretch for 20 seconds. It is okay to work in sprints. It's okay to work on something for 20 minutes and then go work on something away from your computer for another 20 minutes. But set yourself a pace and keep a timer. It's not sexy. It's not high tech, but it works. It keeps you from, well, we say surfing the net still, I think, but what we really do is we drift aimlessly out to sea. We don't surf. Surfing implies we're going to catch a wave and come back. We don't do that. We end up, now it was 3 hours later. I can't remember what I went online for, but now I know everything about the Kardashians. Okay, I told you that there's a tool out there that's great for keeping articles. It's also great for digital hoarding. Don't do that. Don't do what I do. It's called Pocket. It is a free browser add-on, and it's an extension you can put on there. And when you see an article that you want to read, but you don't have time to read it right now, you click on the little icon at the top of your browser, and it saves that article in your online Pocket. You can go back and read that later. And that's great. And we're going to talk about that in a second. I see we've got 11 minutes. We're going to get there. The number one thing to remember here is exactly what all of these successful people told me. They said, stop trying to manage time. Time management is a myth. And we've talked about time management all day long. We're going to talk about it again. But time management is a myth. They said, control time. How do we control time? Well, we make a conscious decision to not let other people intrude on our time. When it's possible, you set your schedule, you control your activities, you control your day. If you set the tone, if you train people to not intrude on your time, that is a form of time control. We all have a routine. Every day when we get up in the morning, if you think about it, you follow a routine, even if it's an unconscious routine. You get up, you have your coffee, you read an article, you watch the news, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you get dressed, you do your hair, you get in the car. Whatever that routine is, you could probably do it without thinking anything about it. But what happens when you get to work? Everything blows up because we don't have a workday routine. If you set a workday routine, it sets the framework for the rest of your day. And that one of those routines is set your email response times. Set the times when you are going to respond to your emails. Have a visual tracker. If you think about the Red Cross blood drive thermometer that sits out, in a public space, the closer they get to meeting their goal, the higher that red line goes on the thermometer. Visually tracking our progress on activities is going to help us get there faster. It's going to help us be more confident in our ability to get things done because we can see ourselves getting there, and that motivates us. And you can use Asana to do this. You can use Teams to do this. You can use you can just use a whiteboard or a piece of notebook paper. Whatever it takes, give yourself a visual cue to keep up with your progress. Just like I use Pocket to store digital articles. I get 3 magazines every month. I don't have time to sit down and read 3 magazines, but what I do have is an X-Acto knife. And I take that X-Acto knife, and as soon as those magazines come in, I sit down and I go through and I see articles that I would like to read, but I don't have time. And I'll slice those articles out. Of those 3 magazines, I sandwich all those articles together and I staple them. I put them in my daily bag. And if I'm waiting at the doctor's office, the dentist office, if I'm sitting in traffic, if there's something going on, maybe road construction up ahead, I'm going to be sitting in traffic for a while, I will pull those articles out and read those because I'm not going to suffer the unplanned, the key word there is unplanned downtime. I'm going to have that buffer in my day when maybe if I just need a mental break, I can pull out those articles, kind of flip through them, and as I finish them off, I throw them in the recycle bin, and we're done. Put your personal time on a schedule and keep it sacrosanct. Do not let anybody intrude on your time. I've got employees who, if I call them on their day off, they'd be mortified. I'm not going to do it, number one. But if I have an emergency, I'm gonna find any way possible to deal with something without contacting them because I don't want to intrude on their personal time. If you can recharge, if you can build in your personal time, it's going to help you be more productive in the time that you have structured. We are great at keeping appointments with everyone but ourselves. How many of you keep an appointment to go for a walk, to walk the dog, to play with the kids, to cook dinner, just to take some time and veg out in front of the television or to read a book? We don't plan that time. That ends up being the time that is whatever we have left. Your personal time, the most important time of your day and your life, by the way, is the time that is not spent at work. It's time spent raising your kids, playing with your grandkids. I don't want my email, I'm sorry, I don't want my headstone to say, well, at least he achieved inbox 0. By the way, inbox 0 is this philosophy that every day you should have nothing in your inbox when you go home. And I think that is complete and utter malarkey. I think inbox 0 just gives you one more thing to worry about. What happens if, oh, I can't go home, I've got 50 emails I got to deal with. Zygarnik is coming after us, folks. If we're not going to be able to get it done, why would we want to take another half an hour dealing with email that means nothing. Look, take a break. Hold that time sacred. Plan time to yourself. Plan time with your family. The way we do that is using something called Dan Sullivan's entrepreneurial time management system. And this is good for even non-entrepreneurs, okay? It basically breaks our time into three blocks. Playtime, focus time, work time. All right, when you're a firefighter and you're putting out the fire, you don't have time to get creative about what are all the ways I can think about how to roll this hose up when I'm done. No. You're thinking about putting out the fire. Whatever work you do, it's the same. So let's stop for a second and talk. Are you a lark or are you an owl? Remember, I said there's a perfect time to return emails. There is an absolute perfect time to return phone calls. And this depends on what you are. My wife and a lot of my employees, I've got 2 employees who love to come in at 7 a.m. They are larks. They're what we call morning people. Oh, I hate morning people. But they love it. They can't wait to get out of bed, spend a couple hours in the office before the phone rings, before clients start walking in. It really helps them be productive. And they get out of the office at 4 o'clock. They love it. We only do 4-day work week, by the way. We work Monday through Thursday. So they love being able to get out of the office at 4 o'clock and go play with their kids, their grandkids. Others of us are owls. Our energy starts to pick up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I am good from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night. I can really pour on the productivity. And this was something that I really honed in on during COVID because I could spend most of my day dealing with some of those COVID related interruptions, but then I could jump back in and get some stuff knocked out. If you know what you are, it is going to define when you get things done. I'm sorry, I'm playing with my headphones here, my ear itched. So you're probably hearing some weird noises. If you're a lark, your energy peaks earlier in the day. If you're an owl, your energy peaks later in the day. We want to do those tasks that take the most mental energy, the most brain power. We want to do those tasks that are they're not the most pleasant tasks. Maybe we have to have a difficult discussion with somebody. Maybe we have to return a phone call that's not going to be pleasant. Do those at your mental and energy peak. Do that when you're feeling your best because it's going to go faster. You're going to feel more confident about it. It's going to be more productive than if we just try to muddle through it when we're not feeling great. So if you have phone calls that you need to return, you can always just tell people, hey, I return phone calls between 2 and 4 p.m. every day. That's my time to be on the phone. You can put that on your voicemail message. If it's an emergency, call me back immediately. If I see your number twice here, I'll answer the phone. Again, you're not going to get callbacks. People, their definition of an emergency is not yours. We also need to be aware of the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle says that 20% of our efforts are going to give us 80% of the results. So where do we want to spend our time on? We want to spend 80% of our time on things that are most productive. They're in our core activities or areas of expertise. So when we break our time into work time, focus time, play time, our workday needs to be spent 80% of it on things that we are really powering through. We're going to produce, we're going to get it done. We're not going to leave half work. We're going to rinse and repeat. This is huge because we're going to also have focus days or buffer days, as they could be called. We've done this with our artists. When you're trying to produce, you can't really think about being creative. You can't be in that creative mode, but you're also not resting. So take an idea walk. Go out, do some professional or personal development. Go to a meeting, network with some people, check your email, do some social media, read some social media, do some of those non-core activities. Go to the bank, go to the post office, pick up donuts for the office. Do those things that don't really have an impact on life or death, but these are things that you still need to get done, and it allows you to think about things a different way. You might drive past a car dealership that helps you think about something in your office that needs to be done. But on your free days, look, stick your toes in the sand, Put your knees in the breeze, ride a bike, ride a motorcycle, do whatever, do something fun, but don't do any of those work things. Because if you hold those free days sacred, it makes you much more productive. All right, our time's almost up here. These are the things that just as a rehash with a couple of additional things here that I want to mention. If we are results oriented rather than task oriented, if we start listing our to-dos as the results we want rather than the tasks we need to do, we're going to be much more likely to get those done. Do today's work today. Don't put it off till tomorrow, because Zygarnik is going to come after you. Surround yourself with trusted others. That way, the do it, delegate it, or ditch it becomes so much easier. You can turn things over to people that you trust. Don't have trivial conversations. Remember, if somebody comes around and you're in deep work, how can I help you? What do you need from me? And don't suffer. I'm sorry. I knew there'd be a spelling error in here. Don't suffer necessary evils. If your mental well-being says, I really shouldn't go visit Aunt Mary this weekend because Aunt Mary's going to drive me crazy, don't go see Aunt Mary. Call Aunt Mary and say, I really wish we could come over, but we just had something come up, can't make it. This is going to sound pretty preachy, but if you keep a regular bedtime, that is one of the paramount cornerstones of setting your daily routine. And don't feel guilty about saying no. All right, I'm going to leave you with one thing to avoid and one thing to remember. The thing I want you to avoid is what I think is the source of a lot of grief and angst, and it costs us a lot of time, and that is misdirected self-anger. Misdirected self-anger. I'm running late for work. I'm cussing at all the other drivers. I'm shaking my fist at the sky. I'm blowing my horn. I'm weaving in and out. I'm endangering myself and others. I'm mad at all these drivers. But I'm really mad at myself because if I had left 5 minutes earlier, if I had not hit the snooze button that one last time, I wouldn't be in this situation. I'm not angry with other people. I'm really mad at myself. So don't get mad at yourself and take it out on other people, and don't get mad at yourself and let it boil over, because it costs you productivity, it costs you mental horsepower. The one phrase I want you to remember that will save you a lot of time, especially as we come upon a political season here. We're in a presidential election year. There are plenty of opportunities to argue with people, whether it's about tribal politics, national politics, any other kind of politics. Here's the phrase I want you to try. Here it comes. You may be right. You may be right. I caught my wife using this phrase on me numerous times over the years, and then I caught on. It's not that I was right. She just didn't want to argue. And we were able to move on so much better without animosity when she would just say, you may be right. It wasn't worth the argument, and it wasn't worth the time. Okay, folks, learn to say no. I'm going to leave you with these two quotes. You never find time for anything. You've got to make the time. And I'm gonna park it right here and let you read this as I turn things back over to Brooke. Thank you so much for being my headlights on that dark road. Thank you so much for staying in here with me, for responding, for engaging with me. And I'm so thankful that you spent this time with me. And I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Brooke, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much for an amazing webinar, Russ. I was sitting here taking notes. I'm going to get myself in check with my time management. I'm going to go ahead and launch today's webinar feedback survey for y'all. I've just had it pop up on your screens. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute or two to complete that for us, it helps us to know what's working well with the webinars, what we can improve upon. You can even suggest some topics you want to hear about, but be as candid as you want. They are anonymous surveys. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That's going to be next month, actually, on September 5th. And that'll be FLSA, What Managers Need to Know, presented by Lisa I. Perez. And you will be able to find today's webinar, the recording, starting tomorrow, as well as any of our other recorded webinars at our website, nativelearningcenter.com. There's a whole Cathedra webinar section, and within that, there is a recorded webinar section. So our archives go back about 2 years. You could share that with your friends, share that with your colleagues. Please also check out our upcoming events posted to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have our in-house produced podcast titled The Hope of Being a Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. And you can find that on Simplecast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you more like to view the video recordings with guests, you can find that on our YouTube channel. All right, folks, once again, I want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. Thank you again, Russ, for your amazing presentation, and everybody have a fantastic rest of the day. We do hope to connect with you all really soon. It doesn't look like anybody is typing anything, but you got a lot of love in the chat, Russ.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the buffet and have a great one.
All right, everybody, take care.